Oh, and we're live. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I'm here, as always, to be your griot, tell you a story, right? To enlighten you through being a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. What does that mean? Don't believe a word I say. You gotta figure this out for yourself. You're in the sandbox because love's co-creation. Do, do, do. You guys remember Tracy Chapman? She was. Well, here we are. Black Lives Matter. Pandemic. July. Well, it's really now the 18th. And what's the real question is all of these things are coming together. I remember, back in the 50s, we were going to be obliterated by no Russians, no Sputnik. We were already on the moon with our Nazis. We had already gone to Mars. We had already conquered. Oh, thank you, dear. Oh, here, I want you to put it in that. It's empty. Thank you, Princess. I'm here in my little corner of the general store, and I just had my breakfast. I'm all coffeeed up here. And let's see. We're all ready to respond to your. All we have to do is look at our leadership, our Hey there, AI. My good little puppy dog. Then people look at Jesus and being Christ-like, and I'm a Christian. Well, then how come you don't embrace your Muslim brother? And you Muslims, how come you don't embrace your Jewish sisters? That's equal. We're all equal. The understanding of love's co-creation. So what do you want to talk about? I'm really blessed. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. No TV, no satellite, no internet, no cable TV, no nothing. Not even radio.
I want to go back to what you were saying about safety and efficacy.
But I do get the college station in Johnson City, just barely. And so I get to listen to public radio, which isn't public, it's totally corporate.
Very large studies where we see if people get infected or not, and those studies are beginning. One thing that I think is very important people remember is that there are 23 vaccines in human trials, and the good news.
And Mr. Fauci's Anthony's going to get a chunk of cheddar for each one on the virus itself. Did he have anything to do with it? How did he get? And the CDC has nothing to do with the government. It's a private corporation. Your connection is unstable. Watch it. Unstable. And we're only 4 minutes into this. And so, back in the day, so I'm old enough to remember really being scared about polio, right? My mom ran a hospital, so she was all in. And she used to, when anybody had anything, chicken pox, measles, whatever, she would find out because she had the access to who was sick, right? She had the big list in, public health. And so she would find somebody that we knew who had a big family. And yes, Larry over here, he might have gotten it bad, but his sister, Loose Lips, and the other Jimmy and and Bobby, they all, got it, but a lot less. So she would find the one who had it the least, and then would invite them over to our house for a play day, right? And she would send us outside to roll around in the dirt, right? Not be inside, but just wrestle. She'd go out and wrestle. Go out and wrestle Bobby, right? And having noticed that men are totally inferior to women, you know, women can actually, they're starting to fertilize themselves, right? And men can't do that. Men can't have babies. We are useless pieces of genetic trash, right? We are the dribble down our daddy's leg, and that's men, right? Women really, it's like the mother of invention, not the daddy of invention. Virtually every 19th century invention was, except for Tesla's, was done by women. The McCormick Reaper and the cotton gin, they were all invented by blacks and women because they were the only people working out in the fields. Because they didn't own anything. Only white men could own anything. And late at night, after 10 o'clock, I can go onto the AM band and listen to the whole world bounce at this vocal skip. So I get New York and Middle America, Chicago, and the Twin Cities and St. Louis and Florida and Ireland and parts of Mexico. I get bouncing in Canada. And on AM, it's just talk radio. And the only, and talk radio is 99.999% neo-liberal, fascist Republican, right? And so how can Republicans be liberal? Well, because it's liberal, left, right, two wings of the same corporate fascist bird. Go read Dr. Quigley of the CFR, his book from the 60s called Tragedy and Hope. Right? And then his student that I knew well, or fairly well, at Georgetown, wrote a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. Go read that one, right? And but virtually everything you read, including my work, go to xratted.blogspot.com and read my writings, right? xratted.blogspot.com, right? So, do. There it is. And it's under Griot, Griotte Publishing. And now everything I write, I have a little thing that says, spelling is just a yardstick. Don't measure anything by it. No, that's grammar. Spelling is a spell. It's like a poison apple. Don't eat it, right? And that was the poison apple in the garden was logos, the word, because up until then everyone was psychic. We could communicate. Babylon, those days, everyone could know what everyone was thinking. That's why everybody was so honest. You knew what they were thinking, right? So my newest novel is called Legacy, and I'm up. You can go see the 9th cut, right? And I'm working on the 10th. And as I'm writing this thing, I'm now at about 120 pages. It's going to be about 300 pages long. I got the outline, and I'm writing away. And I put it up there for you to read and for me to go to, Blogspot and see what you're thinking. Well, not many of you are thinking, obviously, because nobody's reading this stuff. And I, on purpose, use strange spelling and grammar because it's like the Hebrew Toma. It's the roll. Why they had their holy book in a big roll, so they could roll it out and read instead of having to turn the page. They rolled it out and they had a pointer, and they would point at each letter, not the word, letter, in the scribe, in the script, because in Hebrew every letter is represented by a number, and you put those numbers together in a certain way. There is a number of mathematical formulas that are like the spheres of the universe. You stick it in there, and you get something else, and that was the Da Vinci Code. They had that little rolly thing that you, and then it would give you, right. It was like the Germans had the Enigma. And so that's what happened. The Tower of Babel was like Icarus. They were trying to get up into the heavens where the gods were, who were basically aliens up there. And that big lightning bolt that blew up the Tower of Babel was a scalar weapon that not only blew up the tower, but it enforced a psychic bubble around them. So they were like, now everyone didn't understand each other. They all had a different word, different logos, different, and that's why you have the Old Testament, New Testament, and you have the Quran, and you have the Vedas, and you have a whole bunch of books, right? And if you read them, like I have in the last 50 years, I used to get paid to read them, to look for the codes in them, to see the hidden stuff in them, to give the corporations a heads up on what was coming down. That was and that's why I did it. I mean, they paid me pretty good, but just at the time, I was like, only what did you do for us? What are you going to do for us now? Not like what did you do, because I was not scholastic. I was not, born to hunt to be a tenured professor. No, I didn't do that. All my friends who became tenured professors basically died. I mean, they had to go through so many hoops, and still today they're tenured professors, and they're too scared to say anything or do anything or be anything other than what their institutions want them to be. Me, not so much. I'm your basic scholar, itinerant scholar, that's me, right? And now I'm in my 70s, and I'm really sick, but hey, I'm in pretty good shape too, because every morning I get up and I meditate and I pray, and I basically, those two parts of my brain, I kind of put together and balance them. When you do that, you become something else. You become something else. You become a child of God, right? Become the sister.
Well, here we are. Black Lives Matter.
All over again, right?
July.
And that's, in Shakespeare's Macbeth, they say, when Macbeth, he's gone through all this crap. And he's sitting there with his friend, and his friend, wow, you survived, you're on top, And he goes, I have only tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. Meaning, he realizes that he's now in jail. His big quest is over, and he's left, he's turned everything to ashes. Everything he ever loved, he killed. And the story of Gilgamesh is the same, The story of the Golden Fleece is the same.
It's the only thing that matters.
And, when we look at Chaucer's,
And that is
this story of the wife of Bath, she was only real through all literature. The only basic hero who got it right. She was a woman, and basically her attitude is, I was born, I was dealt a bunch of hard cards, and so what did she do? She got away from her, terrible family, and he married somebody who wasn't as terrible as her terrible family, and that guy had a little money, And the one thing that guy realized was that this woman here, not only, she may not be the cutest thing going, she may be a little chunky in the trunk, but he liked that. And he realized she's smart. And that if he let her drive the boat with him, in front of it going, look at me, which was what she wanted because that made him the target and not her, right? And so she could have a life that she could truly um, embrace and love. And, you know, anyway, so her story is, after all, and all she does, she runs an inn, a tavern, and everyone goes there, and she's got a general store and a place to stay upstairs, and the girls in the back, and so you got it going in that little town. She's right on the interstate and the overpass, and so she sees everyone come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go, and she watches their lives and all the tragedies and things. And she's sitting there, and she, her husband, yeah, he's okay, but he's off going, look at me. And she wants to get laid. She takes one of those good-looking young guys in the back and does him good. And so she realizes the real value of life is to learn from your experience and have a good time. That God isn't there to punish you. God is there to, enjoy. We're like I Love Lucy. Soon as we stop being interesting. I mean, Donald Trump has mandated a longer series of the human species on Earth in reference to our space overlords. They're going, yeah, this is fun stuff. Look at this moron. And people going, yeah, he's playing 7-dimensional chess. Yeah, really. But what I love about Donnie is that he lies so much. He goes 180 and tells the truth. And, when he goes on these rants, like the other day, he was supposed to just, bringing back, work, and he had his two big tractor trailers, a red one and a blue one, and he walks between them. And he goes on about light bulbs, right? He goes, oh, it's so great. We brought back the old incandescent light bulb, who want, it's so much better than the other one. And it's like, what? A LED light bulb lasts, 20 years. An incandescent light bulb lasts like 3 or 4 months, right? Incandescent bulb, if you burn 100 watts of light, which are measured in lumens, which is about 850 lumens, if you, 100 watt incandescent, and so 100 watts equals 1 amp, right? In Ohm's law, right? You take the voltage, divide it by the average, you get the watts, you multiply watts times voltage, you get the, anyway. So, but a diode gives you almost twice the light, twice the lumens. Instead of burning it at 1 amp, 100 watts, which, your little electric meter is, charging you by the watt hours, right? Well, with a diode, instead of 100 watts, it is 0.008 watts for twice as much light. And that light bulb lasts, 20 years, when that incandescent light bulb lasts a few weeks or months, right? And because they got rid of it, to bring it back, that light bulb now is not, super cheap. It costs as much as it does. So he's up there going on about the incandescent light bulb. He knows, it's like, really? And he's talking about water and how, we should waste water because we got so much of it because it rains, right? And he doesn't even know that our water doesn't come from rain. It comes from the deep earth. And that's a whole nother explanation. But go Google that. That's what Google's for, not for me wasting my time telling you stuff you should go Google. But so I want you guys to go, each of you, all 2 of you. Now, AI, you can do, just put a sleight of hand and give me, 8 million subscribers. You know, let's get some subscribers here. And keep pushing that button, that little bell, right? And go on. You want to talk to me at the dudewake42 @gmail. And so when you do that, you can go to my PayPal and drop me some change. No one's really dropped me any change. So, why don't you do that? Because, hey, I can exist on $480 a month. I do it. I can even go out to breakfast. This costs me about $8 every time I go on. I got gasoline to get here, and then you just can't do it. I have to have breakfast, which is very nice. I like having breakfast. Like I said, they gave me a nice little corner, and So, anyone got anything to say? What do you think? So how fragile of a white person are you? Everyone goes, I'm not. Whenever I say, hey, what do you think of Black Lives Matter? I'm not racist. I know some black people. It's like, come on. You don't know what it is to be black. You've never lived in a black neighborhood. You've never been, scared to go out because the odds of you getting shot for just being there is like, And I used to be a New York City housing authority policeman, right? And, I had a partner who was scary girl. She could kill you 20 different ways. She was part of the Delta Force. That means she was trained by the Navy as a SEAL, the Army as a Ranger, as the Air Force as whatever the Air Force does. The Marines, she had all of that training and all of that, right? And so we were the ultimate good cop, bad cop. I mean, she wore the uniform, the body armor. She had body armor. This is 1980, and she had body armor. She had whatever she could get. I remember, and so when we would go to court, because I would try and never get it to court, but once in a while we could go to court. And so she wore the whole uniform, everything, and me, I was just like this, a shirt, pair of shorts, a hat, no badge, no nothing, no radio, no mace, no club, no nothing, right? I did have a flashlight, but I didn't have a big mag light to hit you with. I had this great little, which, it's an electrician, You could either hold it in your hand, right, or wear it on your head, like a camp flashlight. That was pretty bright. So, and I would always walk in. Like I remember so she had the radio, and we would get a call. And so we were in a housing project on Hudson Street. It went from Hudson to 21st Street, give or take. It's right on the east side. It's right along 2nd Avenue and the streets over here. The Con Ed plant's there, 16th Street. Anyway, I forget what it's called. But it was very nice. They built it in the 40s, and it was very nice. But it was still, a minimum security prison, because everybody lived in these little apartments, concrete blocks, but they weren't squeezed together. They had nice space. It was like they were plopped down, and they turned that into a park. They had basketball things, and it was actually quite nice if you were outside. Pretty much everybody was outside. And we would hang outside and talk to everybody and see what it was. And there was this one place where they had New York had these concrete, picnic tables that were also, checkered boards and, chessboards. And she would sit there, and in her many military pockets, she had a little set of chess pieces, right? And so her interaction with the public, because these guys would play chess for money, right? And they had the clock. And so, and she had a little one, she put there. And so when we were on a call, we would be under a tree. I mean, everybody knew where we'd be right there. And people would come and talk, right? And in this place where there was this one table, there was, benches on either side where easy 20 people could sit, And so I would sit there, read a book, write, draw a picture in my sketchbook, and whatever book I was reading, and my little lined paper, composition books, a bazillion of them. And I'd be writing away, thinking about something, drawing a picture, and people would come and say, "Oh, draw me a picture," and I would draw a picture of them and give it to them. Right? And so I would do stuff like that, and people really liked it. Hey, Fish, good to see you. And she would sit there playing chess with these homeboys and these OGs. And she would, I mean, everything she did so better than anybody else. It was unbelievable, right? And she was obviously a lesbian, but she liked me, She said I was the best lesbian she ever knew, right? So we actually had a little thing, but we kept it way down low because people would look at us and go, "No, that's not going to work. They're not doing that," Because she was like a tiger. She was ready to pounce. She was, even though she's playing chess, and she would pounce playing chess. So, we're there. I'm drawing a picture. She's playing chess with the OGs. Comes over. And it's summertime. It's really hot. Like right now, it's ridiculously hot. It's only 11:40, and it's like 90 degrees. And we're on top of a mountain. It usually never gets hotter than 80. And now it's 90 something. It's going to be up in the hundreds up here. Meaning that's something. Last night it was 82 at 3 in the morning. And we're in a rainforest. Usually there's a thunderstorm. It's not a cloud in the sky. Something is up, right? So, and they're not spraying anymore, so they're doing something else. So anyway, so we get a call, and it's like, oh, it's on the other side of Avenue D. So we have to cross Avenue D. It's not in this little megaplex with these big, tall buildings. And now all those buildings have been sold to a developer back in the 90s and turned into condos. Things that were minimum security prisons for poor people are now condos for rich folk. Very interesting. And so, it's like, oh, that was good old Billy Boy Clinton, who basically got rid of the safety net and got rid of welfare and got rid of anything that would help anybody who wasn't a billionaire, right? And so, anyway, we get this call, and it's like, a husband-wife call, and which is all the calls we got. The drug calls, we had pretty much dealt with the drug issue. We basically said, hey, listen, don't sell this stuff out of these apartments. Don't sell this stuff on site. Don't sell this stuff in front of schools or churches. Go to, go down on Avenue D where all the buildings are abandoned. Go over there. That they're all burned down. And that movie New Jack City was just about that. So anyway, they did, because I hit them up and said, listen, you may not be selling drugs to your sister, your niece, or your daughter, but others are, because you are. So if you don't do it, I'll get everybody else not to do it, so your families will be safe from the drug. Just like today, this whole pandemic thing is just a shiny object, like to keep us, distracted, because basically this present administration, I don't want to call it the Trump pins, because they're just pinheads. No, this is the deep state. It's again just another distraction. What we have is the hidden hand, which is a transnational thing. What's going on in China is being done by the same people that's making what's going on here and in Europe and Brexit and all of that, right? All of the wars, Yemen and Syria and all of those things, right? I'd gone to Syria in the 70s. I went to Syria, Iraq, Iran, and all the other states would be Swedish tourists pretending to be a Swedish tourist. So I would get a Swedish visa to go to these countries, not an American, right? They look at me, and I just little thing that said I was Swedish. So all those countries, Iraq, a good example. They were better than America in a way, in that they were clean and ran, and the buses, 3 in the morning. It wasn't like New York City where the subway might show up in 20 minutes. I mean, it came, you could set your watch by, and it didn't smell like urine, I mean, if you pissed on anything like that, the men in black would come and visit you. So everybody, but they didn't mess with your life. If you wanted to be Christian, you wanted to be Muslim, if you wanted to be a yo-yo, you could, you know, as long as you didn't do anything to diss the state, you could do whatever the heck you want. You know, you could have a business, right? I had a friend who had a transportation business. They had trucks, buses, cars, limousines all over Iraq. And he would take me because he liked me. He would drive me everywhere I went. He would like, hey, I'm doing some stuff. You want to sit in the front seat for a day or two and watch me go to here and there, and I'll show you the different cities. You know, and I went to all of these great cities, and they were amazing, beautiful, right? And he took me to Lebanon, which was amazingly beautiful. He took me to Palestine. He took me to Israel, and he dropped me off at a kibbutz where I stayed for, well, all of Israel was like that kibbutz. It would be all right, but it's not, you know. And he took me to Muammar Gaddafi's little country, which was, you know, the people of Libya had a higher living standard than anyone else in the world. You know, it was top of the industrial, you know, had free healthcare, free school, free house, free food, right? And they had drilled, you know, they had oil wells, and Libya had this stuff called Libya, you know, clear, meaning it was like the oil was so pure coming out of the ground, you could almost put it in your car, right? This bunker oil, this other crap, this sand oil that they get from Canada, please. And that, so, you know, that was the highest, you know, of all the different oil prices. That was the benchmark of the highest oil, right? And so they were making more money for their oil than Saudi Arabia was, right? Or Iraq, right? And they drilled wells even deeper into the deep earth, where that's where the water is. And the water that comes out of rain comes from there. It gurgles up, evaporates, goes, it's not, you know, it doesn't roll, you know, it rains. No, it's all right, not so much. And if that water was down there, we would have the oceans we have today. Go check this out, right? So anyway, so they had more water than oil. Hey there, Jane. Good to see you, girl. Haven't heard from you in a while. And so, you know, they would pump the water up, and they turned all of their country into a breadbasket. So their money, they did not borrow money from international bankers. You know, they had their own money that was based on gold that they had. So they had no interest on their money. So they had an amazing economy, and everyone had a job based on not what the government wanted them to do, but on what they wanted to do. You know, Alan, good to see you. Long time, haven't seen you since you're looking and sound magnificent. Good to see you and hang out for a bit. God bless you in the country. So say we all, right? And so I watched, you know, and Syria was, you know, I went over to where they had these Buddhist temples in Syria, which gave a real heads up on who was doing what at when. And that's why ISIS blew them up. They blew up history, ISIS. That was sent in there not to, you know, take over, but to take humanity sideways, just like the mud flood did in the 1820s. 1820s, the Earth, you know, some object came flying by, and its gravitational field went to our planet, and we had a Noah's Ark scenario where the whole ocean went on a gigantic wave, and it hit places like Australia and the United States and Canada and that whole entity, but nobody was there really, not like Europe, and like all the water kind of went from that part of the world over, and it basically, that event, it's called the mud flood. Go Google it, the mud flood, right? And there's another thing called Tartania, which was a whole other part of the world. That there were lots of people. It was like, the Marvel Black Country, you know, it was like that. And it got mud flooding, right? So this mud flood that happened around the 1820s um, killed almost three-quarters of the human race and left, most of the survivors of that event were children because children seem to be, they can bob and weave better because they don't know to, get scared and be frozen. So they survive. And so go look up the mud flood. And there's so much stuff. There's a guy named Porter, Robert Porter, who was the science reporter for the Herald Tribune. And he kept stumbling like Chicago. The Chicago fire, it burned twice. Chicago kind of became a big city because of cows and the railroad. And when it was when it first grew up, from zero to about 160,000, fastest growing city in America. It did have a fire that was caused by, Mr. McGillicuddy's cow kicking over the land, right? And the city, it was windy. It's called the Windy City for a reason. It was windy and it was a fire and everything was wood right next to each other. Kind of burned out the place. Well, that's when the industrials moved in and, said, look, there's all this iron, there's all this transportation of the Great Lakes. We're just getting these big boats that can transport almost anything. So why don't we build steel mills here? And look, there's all this granite over there that we can turn into concrete. And they had sand, too, a lot of sand. And like Florida, you know what Florida's major export is? Isn't, what the biggest thing they make money on their GDP? Isn't tourism, isn't oranges, isn't fruit and vegetables. It's sand. China has been buying their beaches to turn into concrete and glass over there. So, all of this stuff is not, we don't have any transnational states anymore. We have, the hidden hand and the high table, and the thing that we only get to see are the morons of the powers that shouldn't be and the sock puppets that represent us as legislators. But it's like, right now we're going to, vote for president for two old morons, Donnie and Joe, and Joe can't even tie his shoelaces, It's going to be really amusing to see those two go after each other at a debate. I bet you they don't have any. They're going to use, COVID, we can't have a debate. They could, Joe could be in his basement, Donnie could be on the toilet, and they could bring them together in Zoom. Or what would be more interesting, a lot of people are getting tired of Zoom, and they are having their business meetings on platforms of video games, samurais, cowboys, war heroes. And you don't have to shoot each other. You can, go on that platform, become Sergeant Larry, and, sit around the fire and talk about business. And it takes less bandwidth. It has certain characteristics that Zoom doesn't have, like being owned by the Chinese and downloading everything. But everything's being downloaded. China is not China. It's not a transnational state. It is part of the hidden hand. They were, eating dirt up until, Dr. Kissinger went to visit. That guy's still alive. He's never gonna die. He's like some 1930s horror, guy. Really well. Thanks for asking, Fish, family, and pals. Helen, healthy. How's the last few months treated y'all? Yeah, tell us, everyone. How's the last few months? To me, I'm out in the deep green. I got this place 10 miles to me that I can go online. I can have breakfast. They sit me in a corner so I don't bother anyone. Thus, the closest person to me is 20 feet away. They put a fan right over here, so I'm blowing air at people when they come near me. I've got my, thing. And the other thing I got that's really good is this right here. Some friends of mine who aren't even in the state, in an undisclosed place, but they used to be guys I knew that in Asheville, we ran this thing called the Beer College. They were, you know, purveyors of Bud and Shine. And so those were against the law. So with this, you know, pandemic, they took their stills and instead of making Shine, they made 100% alcohol. And they found somebody who made, nobody wants this anymore. So they bought 500,000 of these things for $1,000, right? And so they sell you this with pure, kill anything, and it comes out as a mist, right? And so you can spray it on stuff, you can spray it on your hands, right? You can drink it if you wanted to. I mean, I wouldn't suggest it. But so every time I go anywhere, I carry this instead of little bit of hand sanitizer. I got one of these, right? And they gave me a, you know, they also, you know, they can't just fill these all the time, so they bought like 1 million Crapple 1-gallon milk containers, right? Because there were a couple of dairies that went out of business because of this, and so they bought all of their milk containers, right? So they gave me 21-gallon. I got enough hand sanitizer, you know, for the next 5 years, right? So I got about 20 of these little things, and they're all over my house, all over everywhere. You know, wherever I can put my hand, there is one of these things, right? And it's great. I can squirt it on my butt, under my arms. You know, it's better than taking a shower. Buddy, good to see you. The gang's all here. So there I was, you know, back there in the housing project in New York in 1980. When was that? 87, I guess. And I hadn't gone off to Brazil yet. And I got this job because we take over all over New York. You know, when I came back, you know, brought it down to like, you know, $20 billion. Now it's like, you know, $140 trillion, you know. And that's thanks to 2 Republican administrations. And so came back and they, you know, in one day, Ronald Reagan just signed an executive about 10 million people who have been institutionalized their whole life. Street. That's where homeless people came from, right? Homeless people used to be called bums, and they were guys who had PTSD from World War II, Korea, right? And they got their VA check, and you know that kind of kept them going. And they would, you know, hang out on places like the Bowery in New York, but they didn't, you know, they weren't homeless people, right? They were like a potted plant. And the underclass lived in housing projects and were on welfare, which was that, just like we're getting this, the working class is getting their $600 check, and people like, you know, Moscow Mitch are going, oh, it's terrible. We're making more money not doing anything than being a slave. Oh, we got to get rid of this. Well, the only reason we gave those people $600 is that if we didn't, they wouldn't have bought stuff at Walmart's and the Dollar Tree and Dollar General, and our economy would have really collapsed. So end of July, that's ending. So about something on the order of 40 million people are going to not have any money. So that isn't going into the economy. And so you thought the stock market crashed. Now it's like eked up to around 20. It's not hit 27,000 because that's, as soon as it does, it's going to go like that because everyone's going to bail. So they're not, you know, it's 26,940, and everyone's making money who has money, right? So that is the real issue, you know. In about a month, things are going to be wow. And yet, a good deal of the population is still going to have their head in the sand, not realizing. So even when you don't work, you come here.
I'm working.
That lady is the hardest working person I know, and she makes it look easy. The mail lady of this whole neck of the woods. So, So there I was sitting on the bench. Oh, and how I got that job is so we took over because of this, and there were, I came and I saw people who had been workers, and crack was a big issue because people would smoke pot and they could still work. People would drink and they could still work. People who did crack, they went off the radar. They never came back. I mean, a good portion, maybe 80%, 89%. You never had a problem with substances. You smoke crack, they don't see you ever again. And again, New Jack City is a good movie to tell you what that was. Congray's buddy, yeah. So anyway, showed up, and all my friends who hadn't sold out yet, we got to do something about this. What's going on? All these people in the street, because they were mommy and who had 6 kids, and they were living. They used to have a rent-controlled apartment, but now they and what happened with the oil embargo. Those guys who own those buildings would get all these subsidies in taxes, and that's what paid for rent control. But when the only thing they had to do is kind of keep the building up and pay for the heat. And the heat, when oil was 20 cents a gallon, not a problem to get bunker oil and run your oil burner in the basement for heat. When it went up to 40, 50, 60 bucks a drum, they just walked away from the buildings. It wasn't work for them. So millions of apartments went viral. And then bankers redline these areas because navigate the pitfalls. And so if you were redlined, your little bodega, your little restaurant, your little hardware store closed because they wouldn't give you any money. Even if you owned a building, even if you had, very good. It's still paying you. So then these redlined areas had nothing. That's where they became food deserts because there was no anywhere you had to go. And certain of these areas, they closed. The bus just went through that area. It didn't stop. The subway station closed down because the city went bankrupt in the 70s. And that really killed whatever social safety net there was. And so that's where we are today. None of this was natural. It's like racism. Racism isn't it's not a cultural thing. It isn't coming, you're a racist, you're a bad person, and there's, some bad apples. No, this is an orchestrated, engineered plan to keep the masses. And that's everybody, even somebody who thinks they're wealthy, even someone who thinks they're doing okay, you go to any folks who are, and it's like right? And the folks here are poor, pretty poor. Now the Floridians, who come in, and basically we had no COVID, we had no 19 until around March when the Floridians were starting to get scared, so they came here, right? Especially in April and May. And they were all sniffling and coughing. And all the people who were in the hospitals, like Johnson City, all the people in their ICU are from Florida. And probably by September, it's going to be, because they got no social anything. I mean, nobody wears a mask. I wear it as a kind of fashion statement. So, but, when I came back from Ireland in 1980, John Lennon gets shot, and that's when we started doing Universal Peace Day in the Sheep Meadow where the band shell is, right? And we would get 50,000 people to show up singing Give Peace a Chance, And then, what's her name? John's wife, Yoko, kind of lived across the street and watched it, and that's when she started Strawberry Fields, and she helped us out. And me, Suzanne, and a number of folks who did Art for the People. That was our organization, And Suzanne was great. She was, came from super wealthy folk, and yet she was, when I started taking over buildings, she'd be down there with a sledgehammer smashing through the things and, you know, living there. She had a beautiful, we both had beautiful lofts in West Bath, which was the elite of the art scene. You know, you had been in the art scene, the city, and because I was one of the guys who, convinced Mayor Lindsay that they should let, you know, Soho be Soho, and we Soho stands for South of Houston. You know, we were there in his office smoking some Cuban cigars, and green lining these neighborhoods. You know, Match, Rebecca, Williamsburg, other places. I said, these are industrial areas that are totally down the crapper, and if artists go and rent them, they should not be attacked by the police. And John Lindsay, that's where Fun City came from. The Big Apple, right? So I had a real good cafe, and that's why I could do things. And the fact that I never did them to self-aggrandize myself or make money off it was people were like, oh, wow, he's the real deal. And but I was being self-aggrandized, but not to the TV audience, but to the people who within the construct of our capitalist structure mattered. The rich people, they're the ones going, yeah, we can use that. Al's one of us. Look where he came from. Look at the schooling he had. Look, his godfather was Cardinal Cushing. Look, his mother, she's like Adolf Hitler. So I was, allowed to do what I could do, and was rewarded with being allowed to do what I wanted to do, right? And I would, built nightclubs and things for rich people, lofts, restaurants, and I would get paid very well. So I would work that much and get paid that much instead of working this much and getting paid that much, And then when I got into the scholarly job scene, again, I got paid to study books that I wouldn't be able to study unless I was doing it for these guys, and being brought into, I was brought to Egypt to look at the sites, and even the ones that were not being advertised out there near Iraq. And that's what the first Iraq War was about, because they found that France and Germany had found some stuff out there that were like, the Stargate, and they weren't going to share with us. And so we sent the army in to take it. And then the second time we went in was we swept up the refuse of what was there, and then went and took out all of the museums that had all of the keys to all of this stuff, right? And that's why we spent 20, 30 years there, so we could, we have all kinds of underground. You think we got dumps here? We dumped close to $20 trillion worth of money into the financing of war there. Well, and we only killed 1 million people. That kind of trillions of dollars, we should have killed everybody. We didn't. So the hidden hand with our money built all of this stuff. So I just drank so much coffee, I have to go visit the little boy's room. But I will leave this playing, and I want you to talk amongst yourselves. Right? Here we go. I'll be right back. Taking this with me. You know what I'm going to do with it.
Well, here we are. Black Lives Matter. Pandemic. Joy. Or taking it all. It's really amazing. How people stick their heads in the sand. They don't want to realize that they are not a body. Their soul is why they're here. This is a sandbox that they're playing in. That love is the only thing that matters. But we look at the body politics. And that is the body that we want, that we live in. The ugly bag of water. And the more we our self-centered ego, nihilist narcissism of nostalgia rules our life. We find that all we have to do is look at us, our leadership, our Senate, our Congress, our executive, you know. When people look at Jesus and being Christ-like, and I'm a Christian, well, then how come you don't embrace your Muslim brother? You know, and you Muslims, how come you don't embrace your Jewish sisters? You know, that's equal. We're all equal. The understanding of love. Feel your heart. That trickster is fevers.
I want to go back to what you were saying about safety and efficacy. You say that the volunteers for this trial have antibodies, which is critical. Do we know whether that response is strong enough to prevent infection?
No, we don't know that. We can only know that by doing very large studies where we see if people get infected or not. And those studies are beginning. One thing that I think is very important for people to remember is that there are 23 vaccines in human trials,
And any patch, you got to make a lot of money, along with the girl with the scarf girl. Let's see, what do you guys think? Trying to see who could drink more. So are they? Texan crazy times. Yep. Mm-hmm. This real social interaction. Yep. I was overweight, wide load, bad acne issues. Now you're not, right? You're not that. Great night. Female company too. So true. Let's see. See, when I go away, you guys start chatting up the storm here. You like that? Yeah. Born to hide. No, I think it's born to hunt. I'm hiding under this. This is a very MAGA neighborhood, so I wear, and this ain't quite red, but it's red enough, you know. And so every time the boys go by, I got my camo vest. I always, for 20 years I've been wearing this, and this is my man bag. Everything I need is in the pockets. Got a million pockets here. Or in their 50s, yep. Any suggestions? Yeah, go with David Bowie. He's dead. He's my favorite rocker. He's been so many different rocking things, that he went from Ziggy Stardust to Frank Sinatra. From the 50s. Jimmy, it's a guy who married his cousin, and he was 38, and she was like 12. He played the piano. Rockin', what's his name? Lee. Buddy Holly? Might have been. Maybe a woman, yes. Go as go as one of those female opera stars with the big horns. So I came back. I remember. So I came back, and all this craziness was going on, and I'm at my friend's bar for artists called Puffy's. Go Google Puffy's. It was right off of Hudson Street, downtown in Tribeca. And this is before, we named it Tribeca, Triangle below Canal Street, with John Lindsay, but nobody really started calling it until the 90s, when the rich people started moving in. But anyway, because it was, the banker said, "Oh, I can walk right from here to Wall Street, no problem. This is beautiful." So, um, and we by that time had, realized what this was. So back when there was nothing, we would buy whole floors instead of just a little loft. We'd buy a whole floor, slice it up, start renting it out, and then when the lawyers and stockbrokers wanted that, we'd sell it to them, and we couldn't because we didn't own anything. But we had a lease, and we could sublet. So we would sell them a key, right? We would slice, at a 10,000 square foot block down there in Tribeca. It was like from Chambers Street to Reed, that's right. And it was in the middle, so there was no skylights. But so we basically, me and some friends, put a hallway down the middle, got some PVC, ran, drain lines, PVC in New York City, verboten, but we did it anyway because it didn't matter. And so we sliced it up into 10 lofts, each about 1,000 square foot. And the ones on the end, we made them a little bigger and gave them the whole ends and charged them twice as much as the others. And the inside, there was and we had pretty good ventilation. That was one thing. We made sure those in-between ones had big duct and good air moving through because it made it, because if you went in there and there was no windows and there was no air, it was a little oppressive, hard to sell. But boy, I can actually feel comfortable in here, right? So, and, I'll decorate it the way I want and, be my man cave, blah, blah, blah. So, I did that 3 or 4 times in Tribeca. But my buddy Frank bought this building that a worker bar had been on, and he called the guy's his nickname was Puppies, and so we called it Puppies. And it was beautiful. It was right on Hudson Street and all the way down whatever street that was. It was like 3 blocks to the AT&T, old AT&T building, and the new Longhorns, which was Darth Vader. Went underground, 40 blocks deeper than 30 stories up, And and that was the first place where all of the main fiber optic cables went in there, right? And a friend of mine had bought a building off of Water Street in an area that had been totally, when they were building World Trade Center, they bulldozed all of the docks along West Side Highway, right? Because they were going to build apartment buildings for the rich people to go into the World Trade Center, right? Well, then the, oil embargo came and the great collapse came, and New York went to bankrupt. So all those blocks left vacant for at least 1972 to 92, maybe. Anyway, maybe 2002. I left New York in '88, and they had built one thing there, and it was like a housing project, not a rich person's apartments. But they built it. It was called Independence Plaza. It was built to be, turned into a rich people place. So, right? They built it with tax dollars to be monetized by rich people. And that is the Imperial Way, right? Ruth Brown. Fish, who's Ruth Brown? Let's see. A musician. Epstein, for sure. Yep. Little Richard. Yeah, I think that was all the people you're talking here are my faves. So, anyway, so we took over all these abandoned buildings that had been burnt, that were in red-lined areas, and nobody cared. So we smashed into them, put a fire core door, and then put a mail slot and mailed ourselves registered mail. So when the marshal would come by, we would show we had a registered letter. I was a master electrician. I could put legal electricity, and I would just file it as a job and show residency by these certified pieces of mail. And Con Ed would much rather sell us electricity than us have us steal it And when we started out with a construction meter, and if there was a lot of these buildings still had active gas lines, and we could have stolen that, but there would be a meter there, and and I would just okay, we're doing a construction thing, and we need some hot water and electricity, so there is a meter in this space, and here's the number, and there's a gas meter, and here's that number, and we put that in, and that was like getting a foothold in the door of the utilities, and then I would fight to bring in real gas and real electricity, like a 400 amp 3-phase service for 10, 20 apartments, and a pretty large gas line. And because we had these other things, we followed all of the rules, they would do it. And then we would give everyone an apartment, usually a floor, So instead of being a little box, 5 little boxes on the floor, everyone would have their own floor. And we gave it primarily to moms that had kids that were out on the street living in a box. I mean, if you want to get rid of homelessness, you give people a home, right? So, and they would fix it up themselves, And I had access to a lot of trades, building trades, because I was a master licensed electrician, and I knew a ton of plumbers, and everybody else. And the mob guys I knew through Mike Finelli, who were doing the carting industry, they loved us because, they would put a dumpster on a construction site, right? And once it got filled up, they would bring it over to wherever they would go to take all the copper out, but we would get the doors and the this and the that, and we would do a demo for these guys so as not to destroy the stuff we took out of the buildings. And we would put it in these dumpsters. They would charge the construction company for it, and they would truck it over to us. It got to a point where they gave us a truck, and we would take the stuff out of the dumpster and put it in that truck and bring it to our construction sites. So they wouldn't even have to move the same dumpster, but they would get, anyway, so we had it pretty sussed. And so we took over 50 buildings, housed 500 families, right? And so, and once we really started going, and we went into neighborhoods that were red lines, so no one cared what we did, right? But there was no food, no this, no schools, no none of that. So there would be a school there. We'd break into the school, take over the school, and make it, and that's where PS1. Go Google PS1, right? And wherever there was a public school, we'd break it open, and we would do what Malcolm X did. We'd turn it into what we call it our people's temple. And so you go in there, you could get a meal, you could get food, you could get education, and you could get healthcare, right? And we also started farming because, a lot of these buildings burned to the ground, leaving empty lots. So we would clear them out, sift through the dirt, start composting, because everyone threw their garbage before we started collecting it out the window. So we would just collect their garbage, sift through it, and compost it. And that's why New York City now has 900 gardens. That's why New York City, up until the pandemic, got almost 100% of its food out of its gardens that they were growing in the schools. And we started that. Outstanding Renewal Enterprises started that, right? And there were different people who had, we had Adam Purple. Don't Google Adam Purple. He was an old-time anarchist he was so responsible, he just didn't believe in the government because he could do a better job. He didn't want to burn stuff down. He wanted to build things. And he was the greatest builder I ever saw. Anyway, so all of this was going on, and the police was attacking us. Once we became a force unto ourselves, where we went, we lowered the crime rate. We got rid of the drugs because we offered an alternative aesthetic. And when I talk about alternative aesthetic, that's what I'm talking about, So they started sending in the police to just kick in the door. And, we took them to court, we won, and they still would come in and kick in the door. Talk about Black Lives Matter. This was way over the top. And it's not just, well, they might stop me in the car. No, they would just kick in the door and club us in our beds, right? They never killed anyone, but they hurt a lot of people, pretty, they just want to get rid of us. They thought, So, the anarchists going, oh, we have to get guns. And I said, no, sorry, that's not going to work. What we have to do is, you know, get over on them with kindness and love. And what is the best thing we can do is use art. So we made these big kind of, I always love the TWA building at Kennedy. It's like this flying lobster. And we made these tents where we would just go onto these, because there were streets in these neighborhoods that nobody was driving on. You hadn't seen a car ever. So we would just, take the garbage cans, put them to block off the street, and we would put this tent up and we would do a cultural festival, right? Now people just, music, Cubano music, Hispanic music, black music, rock and roll, classical. We did it, right? And we also had poetry. We had the Nuevo Rican Poetry Cafe, and that we did on the street. We didn't really have a cafe. They finally got their own building and they had their own cafe, just like we had the Celtic Irish theater, So we had that. And so we had our own theater. We had Arnold galleries. That's what No Say No was all about. And that was part of Collab's. Collab had a bunch of art galleries. No Say No, and what was the other one? No Say No was the more rough, and it wasn't in just one building. It's like we would go take buildings and do our, what I call zombie nightclubs. And Machines was a kind of outgrowth of our zombie nightclub. This rich lady used to come to our thing, and she'd leave us a check, really nice. And then she said, Al, I hear you build nightclubs, that you built, you did Kamikazes and Mud Club and a whole bunch of, Max's Kansas City and Wetlands. And she goes, I want to do a club in kind of like this, but upscale, right? And a friend of mine, Carell, did that, and it was called Save the Robots. And so I took her there, and she and Carell, became instant buddies. And Carell was a contractor. He was a kid who came from the wrong side of the tracks, ended up in jail all the time, was covered in tattoos, and he was the first white guy I ever knew, right? And because he grew up in really black neighborhoods. He was a friend of mine, friend of Corbin's, Eddie, and his brother James, and they were the big family in the South Bronx. And that movie with Denzel Washington, where he's Dapper Dan and owns Uptown. He's a big bug dude, but he gives all the money to people. Robin Hood, but never ends. That stuff never ends good. So the Corbins were that family. They all died, except for the mom, who was the queen of it all. So anyway, so Carell was, truly amazing guy, and he and I, we were like, brothers from another mother. But he was as white as you get, but as black as you get. That's why I learned the term, I'm an African American that's melanin challenged, And he was the first person. I think he invented the term fragility of races, and he was smarter than any sociologist I ever met. He never finished grade school, right? And that's usually the case. OGs are if they came from white rich people, they would be heads of corporations because they were, they were running gangs and illicit businesses. So Mike Finelli, who was an OG of the Italian mafia thing, but he was brilliant. He never did any violence. He made all his money on rolls, restaurant tablecloths and napkins, beer, taps. You could get beer from the beer guys. You could get the refrigerator. You could get the lines. You could get everything except the taps. They all came from Mike. You didn't pay him. You didn't get a tap. You couldn't serve beer. It was every pressure point in the city. He was on the arm. So, yep, city farmers feed cities, and that's what we did. And we did that in the 70s and 80s, and I left in '88, and they kept doing it until the pandemic. You know? To short circuit all of that, you know, there's a guy named Gil Scott Heron, right? And he has a great song, "You're Living in a Grade B Movie," which is, you know, basically you're living in this before the movie The Matrix. Gil Scott Heron wrote that song in the '70s. Go listen to Gil Scott Heron. He was a jazz, you know, he's not a rock and roller, he's a jazz guy, but he did spoken word. So he was the guy, he was the OG hip hop and rap. He was the first guy to use a turntable, right? So, and that was like in the '60s. Right? I met him at a black nightclub, and he played the piano. He was a piano player at this one place. He came from down south. And he had no place to live. I had a big loft, and I said, "Why don't you?" So I said, "Here's my address. You know, there's a door, you know, on Worcester Street. You look, and there's a place. There is no door. There's a big, you know, green thing. It's not a door, but there's a doorbell. Push that button, and that big green thing was, you know, the service elevator of this factory building. It was gigantic. It was like a gigantic garage door, and they had one of those rolled down things that went over the hole, right? So, you know, late at night, doorbell rings, and I'd have this gigantic elevator that was like 20 feet by 20 feet. And it's gigantic. And it had steel columns on either side and a roof with a cable on it, but no walls. When the elevator went up and down, you saw the walls of the elevator shaft moving. And if you leaned on it, it would grab you and you'd become Swiss cheese, right? And so, but nobody did that because it only moved, you know, forklifts of stuff. And so, but late at night, I had the elevator, you know, so because I controlled that building, you know. Benny was the super, and I ran it for him, and so I controlled everything. And it's gigantic loft, 7,000 feet, skylights everywhere, beautiful. Anyway, late at night, you know, I talked to this guy at about 3 a.m, and it was a loud bell. I mean, no way to sleep through it. You know. So the thing rings, I get in, and I come down and push the button, and the gate goes, and there's Gil Scott Heron. And instead of just him, it's him and his band and their girlfriends and their kids and their, you name it, about 20 people and all of their equipment. And they have a old Ryder truck, not a bus, but a Ryder truck that comes right up the loading platform, rolls up. And the guy goes, "This is great. It just rolls straight in." I said, "Oh yeah, that's how it's designed." And I take them up there, and you know, for about 2 weeks until they moved on to their next gig, they were there. They were trying to get a record deal, and so I knew. What was Larry's? Lawrence. He was. He's the guy who started. What was the punk scene, the punk Valhalla, CBGBs, right? Because this thing was right on this crazy street near Cooper Union that cut between Alphabet City and Second Avenue. So Avenue C, Avenue B, Avenue G, CBGBs. And so I took him over to that, and that guy worked for Virgin Atlantic Records. And so Gil Scott Heron, you know, he was already there. You know, people knew about him. He was a legend, but he was black and he wouldn't bend. He did he was doing what he was doing, and that's why he got along really good. You know, and so he moved in, and these guys were like, everybody in his crew was like a Rasta, so it was a lot of boo. But I had all the boo I wanted from Benny. You know, it's not in lack of boo. Or young ladies. I mean, this guy had more young ladies. But that was, you know, that was the 70s. So, and I would leave. would not, say my whole thing is I've done so much different stuff, but it's because it's been punctuated by my journeys all over the world. And in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I traveled everywhere. And I wouldn't just go there like for the weekend. I'd spend, you know, 2 months to a year or two at the place. I spent a year and a half in Brazil. I spent years in Ireland and Europe. And Asia and all over the place, especially when I lived in Sweden. I took advantage of that ability for the state to pay for my vacation and my education. I did anything I could get as being and Sweden's very interesting. They still, up until the time that they let 250,000 Syrians into their country, they were very inviting to people who wanted to emigrate there. And you could go there and stay there, take advantage of their whole social network, and not even have to say you're going to emigrate. And that's what I did, And that was fine. They were happy with it, Same with Denmark. I lived in Amsterdam. And boy, Amsterdam was a great city in the 70s and 80s. It's like sad what happened to it. It became like the upster, hippie, zippy. Everybody lived in communes. Everyone squatted. That's why I learned how to squat in Amsterdam. And the utility company, so many people squatted. Nobody paid rent. And so, and the people who owned the buildings, because they weren't renting it, got paid by the state by not having to pay taxes, because it was like, so the utility companies would give you gas, electricity, no problem. You got a lease? No, it wasn't even that. You live in there? You got a piece of mail? Good. We'll turn on the electricity. Right? So, that's why I learned all about that. And so when I came back to New York in the 80s, and in Ireland, there's a Gaelic term called crack. Cracking good time. Crack means having a good time. Right? And so I'm there, and I've been living in Ireland, for a good year. Right, and I've been living in a little town on the west coast called Glendore, right, from just up the road from Skibbereen. It's a little fishing village, and it's really great. Ronald Reagan had become president. Everyone thought that he was going to blow up the world. So all of the interesting people of Europe, from Germany and France, and all over the place, came to this little fishing town because there was nobody there. All these abandoned, beautiful little houses, little town, And they came and they became fishermen. They were old guys who couldn't even go out on their boat anymore. These German and Greek and English and Scottish, and everybody went there and said, "Oh, here, I'll pay you some money. Let me live in one of your stone crappy houses, and go out and fish." And these guys were like PhDs and this and that, and why they were in Glendore, it was on the Ring of Kerry. It stuck out into the Atlantic, right where the Gulf of Mexico. So it was warm. It was like living in Florida. It had palm trees, right? The Ring of Kerry, all these little peninsulas. They were like swimming pools. Middle of February, the water was 6 degrees, Whereas you go on the other side of Ireland, when the North Sea is, it's like, forget about it. Always gray, always raining. In Western Ireland, it rains, but it's sunny too. And that's why Limerick has lakes, because the old ladies would go get the psychotropic mushrooms out of the cow pies, make tea, sit under a tree and watch the sun and the clouds make patterns, and they would, darn them into lace. And so that's where I lived, in a place like that. And so that's where the old crone, she lived up in the imaginary place up there above the highest, there was the West Coast Road, and there was a road that zipped up to this place that was the highest pub. The other side was Tipperary. I went up into the mountains, and there was this little town, and the only thing really was the pub. That was the post office, and it had one gas pump, and there were a couple of farms up there, and the old crone lived up there. But you had to know where to turn off that crappy road, and then you went into the forest. That was scary, and you thought you were going to drive off a cliff, and then you came out of the forest, and there her meadow was, and her lake. And so she was just, I could actually, it was a nice walk from Glendore up to her place. And there was if I went through instead of taking the road, which would have been about 40 miles, I could go straight up this sheep path up to her place, which was maybe about 5 miles. So, when I would go visit her, I would just do that. And she introduced me to the one who lived in this town. That was the doctor of the clinic. And she was on the path to become the old crone, meaning the old crone back in the 1920s was the doctor in Glendora. Right? And that's when she met Archie, and they became, Archie had this whole idea about how Ireland was the center of the Egyptian culture and that there were pyramids everywhere in Ireland, and there were, right? I spent a good 6 months with him finding pyramids all over Ireland. And if you were to Google pyramids in Ireland, there were a couple that they dug up and turned into tourist attractions, and they call them burial mounds, but they are frigging pyramids, right? And not only that, they are still working. They are still scalar devices, right? It's like in 2006 when this rich bitch who had more money than brains wanted to go to Ireland and buy up a bunch of properties there, because I told her stories of my existence in Ireland, and she, I'm going to hire you to be my guy. I said, fine, you're going to pay the airplane ticket and my hotel room and give me, $10,000 to be your guide. Oh yeah. I said, well, good. And I can take my girlfriend. Oh yeah. So we did. And we went to this place, right? And she goes, oh, I want to see this burial vault. And I knew it. Archie and I found it, right? Back in 1982. And when we took our first little journey in a gypsy wagon. Go Google gypsy wagon, right? I don't know if they have them anymore, but it was like an SUV drawn by a horse. The horse would just clip clop, and you go along these roads that the horse had been on, and the wagon was a gypsy wagon, so there was like beds and a kitchen and a little wood stove and all that stuff, and the horse would just clip clop along. I mean, you could get out and run around, and the horse would just clip clop until it came to the place it knew to pull over and start eating grass and go over the stream and drink water, right? And you'd catch up with it, and you would unplug it from the wagon, and the horse would have pulled the wagon to the perfect spot where it still had ruts where the wagon was last time. And you would take it over to this place that was like a meadow. You didn't have to like tie him up or put a fence around him. He would just sit there and eat the clover and drink from the thing and go into a tree and go to sleep, So, and Archie and I took that trail a number of times, looking for these pyramids, near the beehives, near the all of the stone sites. And all the stone sites the Romans had defiled by turning them into dumps. And then the English turned them into bigger dumps, right? So that's kind of what we went through. And as an archaeologist or anthropologist, if you're looking for stuff, you go find the dump, and you dig through it. So this rich bitch took me to Ireland, and I took her to this place, and so she's like, on the tour, and now we're moving, right? And this 20-year-old girl from college knew nothing. She was just scholastic in training, and I wasn't feeling too good. I was weighing maybe 440 pounds. And so I was looking around, and I had been on this site before, and they had really excavated it, right? And they had, it was a pyramid, but, it was like, 60,000 years old or older. That was like a lump of stones all over the place. So they kind of built a retaining wall around the crumbling stuff that they had dug up. And it was very, 19th century stonework around it. And it was just a retaining wall of this pyramid. And they had a couple entrances in that they said, this is a burial mound. And it was like a museum. It had lights and little dioramas. And I just kind of went on the first one of those things. And I was like, yeah. And so I kind of was walking around looking at where the what would be known as the vibrational chamber was. And so I'm looking around. I start smelling the smell of booze. oh wow. So I'm like, and I come to this opening as I can remember 20 years hence, this was that place. And there was a metal gate, like a jail gate with a big lock on it. And the smoke was coming out. And I'm like standing by, just like, and this guy comes up and he looks kind of like me, but 20 years younger and not as fat, but he's getting there. And he looks at me like going like this. And he goes, "Are you Al?" It's like, huh? And he goes, "You remember Claire Young?" I said, "Oh, yeah, the lady who was the doctor at Glendora." He goes, "Yep. Remember all those kids you used to take care of?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I was one of them. Remember PD?" I said, "You're PD?" He said, "Yeah, I am Dr. Anthony right now, but I was PD then." And that kid was the worst of the worst. He was an OG at 6, and he hung out with the 2 kids I took care of. It's a whole nother story. But anyway, and so he remembered me, and I was 30 when I knew him. Here I was like 60 something, and looking a little younger than this, but still looking like this, and really way bigger. I mean, I was like, bigger than the TV set, way. Like right now, I'm about 200. I was 460, and I was really hurting with every step I took, and that's what destroyed my legs. So, and that's all that damage ain't gonna get fixed, but I can deal with it by prayer, meditation, and losing all that weight and eating the right diet. Right. So anyway, so he unlocks the door, he pulls me in, and he takes me down. He goes, and I went to Trinity with Archie. I mean, I met Archie when um, you took care of us, and then when you left, Archie stayed. He bought a house in that neighborhood, and he took up where you left off. And because he had the connects at universities, he pretty much got everybody into a university. Because Ireland pretty much already had free health care, free. It had a real safety net, right? And education. Education was free. And this is a really poor country. They were a poor country up until they joined the EU when they gave up being Irish. So they became corporate. So and they gave up, and that was the thing that the hidden hand was waiting for. That's why they let them have so much money, and they let it have their tax thing. So people like Google and Microsoft could go in there and not pay taxes, right? So I'm like sitting there, and and this is the workings of the machine is still going on, and that's where this harmonic tube went down into, and he had a little corner that was his man cave, and we sat there and talked, and he had a TV, flat screen with all of the security. He could watch all the security cameras, and he goes, "So you came with these 2 morons and their entourage. Who are those?" I said, and I told him the story. I said, "Oh, okay." And so after they, went on the tour and then had tea and then bought thousands of dollars of, tourist crap that was made in China. Look, they're kind of coming towards the gate. So why don't we? And he's got, we've been smoking out of a chillum. So he had rolled 2 large spliffs, like ganja spliffs, with lamb's breath. So, and in the beginning of the tour, I started telling, I know this place, I found it with, and this really rich woman, I've known her years, until she, her parents died and left her millions of dollars. She was like, poor rich girl, right? And she kind of hung on to me because I was always in the midst of doing something really cool. And whenever we would do that, and she was in that midst, and she was kind of fun, and she was a really good musician, a good singer, good actress. So whenever I needed that, I would pull her into whatever I was doing. And people go, "Why are you hanging out with that bitch? She is such a bitch, and she's always talking smack about you, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, you know me, you know what I do." Why do we even have to worry about what she says? She's like, chopping her nose off just by herself. So anyway, so we go up the tube, and we are just in the anteway of where that gate was, but we're smoking up a storm, and big clouds of booze going out there. And they walk on the path right by it, and my girlfriend is definite boo hound, and she's like, stop, and she can't move. And so he kind of goes, ladies, gentlemen, let me show you the pyramid. And I had been telling them that this was a pyramid that Archie and I had found, and da. And when we started on the tour, and this 19-year-old girl from the university is just reading the script about this is burial ground of blah blah blah. And I said, no, it's not. It's a pyramid. It's and the machine is still working, and the girl didn't even respond to it. She was just like this. And the rich lady told me, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. And she would go, oh, he's don't bother him with him. He knows nothing. He is a nothing. I'm rich. He knows nothing, right? Because he has no money. But money is relevant when you have experience. So anyway, so he opens up the door. She says, come on in. And we go deeper and deeper down this chamber, and the harmonics are going. So it's like changing people. It's like, and a number of the people start throwing up and going, oh, because they're having to start facing themselves, right? And so because the two hemispheres of their brain are trying to be balanced, and so they run away, right? And so my girlfriend, this girl, and another of the entourage are like trying to go down this, wow, we're being allowed into the real secret place, right? And so this guy says, yeah, I am, in charge, Irish antiquities of the whole country, and I've spent the last 20-something years here. And he then tells the stories of the old clone and Archie and me, and how I took him as a street kid and got him out of being that, and then Archie sent him off to university, and that's how he got to be where he is. Everything he is thanks to Al. And this really rich lady was like, but no, he doesn't. He has no money. And that's when he goes, maybe you don't understand. Money is irrelevant. It doesn't exist. You don't exist. You're a big dude. And he just went after her. Because we're in this harmonic chamber where there are no lies, and you can see everything about everybody. And he just a dental drill, not the, but like doing it this way into the nerve without anesthetic. That's what he was doing to her id. And my girlfriend, that was, she would have been my girlfriend. I mean, she was stone cold, alcoholic, drug addict, but she was very rich too, richer than this other girl. And, because her grandfather and father and uncle made $1 zillion, and then they all died and left it to her. And so her whole life was just pretty much doing whatever she wanted to do. Corpus colossum, right? So, and that's one of the greatest things God gave us was the elimination of our colon. And drinking coffee is really good because instead of like having it a misery, it's like opening up the faucet and everything comes out. You orgasm. And that's where I went. And so anyway, that was a very interesting. So after that, it kind of rebalanced everyone's chakras. My girlfriend stopped being as much of a lush and was being more fun and sweet and amorous towards me. I mean, she would want to have sex anywhere, but it was better. And that rich lady, she had an opportunity. She saw because this guy really dug deep and cheap. From that point on, didn't have to be a jerk just because she was. She could be better. She could stop there and be a better person. Which was what I was looking to get out of her for a good 10 years. Anyway, except for about 4 or 5 days more. And I took them to all kinds of interesting places along the West Coast, to all the bars, little towns, and into their churches where they were buried. All of the really well-known Irish poets were buried in their little town. And the little town, makes whatever money they were making out of and so I took them to all these places. And all those places, I knew the guy or gal who was ever in charge of trying to culturally develop the alternative aesthetic. Because when I was on the West Coast, that's all I talked about, up and down, talking there. Because Archie and I would like clip up, from Limerick up to Galway, and stop in all these towns and talk to them. And Archie had, he had been, he had a doctorate from both Oxford and Cambridge, and from the colleges in Wales and Scotland, because he was a Scottish duke. His forefathers owned a big, gigantic estate there. He took me there once. It looks like a gigantic castle. So why don't you? Because no. I would, Ireland's my home. This place, it's all in my name. I put it in a nonprofit. Everyone in the town, I basically hired to run it. It's a tourist thing. Everyone here makes a very nice thing. In the back, there's a very nice house that anybody would call a rich person's house, but it's like the gardener's thing. It's got a greenhouse. It's got this, and that's where we stayed. And these people would, when we'd step off the train, everyone would know he was coming, because the railroad guy in London would call up the railroad guy in the Scottish town saying, "Hey, Archie's coming in," And so it was like the band would be waiting. It was like pretty amazing, and that was Archie. That's where I learned how to be the dude. I was always the dude, but not like Archie. Archie was like, and in my new novel, being the dude, about being the lucky bastard, where people want to be famous and rich and A-lister, and being the dude, you are all that, and you don't even know it. You just kind of lively glide through it, right? And that's what the alternative aesthetics are all about. Because you are the dude, because you're not serving your ego, you are serving love's co-creation through aesthetics, right? That's what I'm born to hunt. I am born to hunt for the cadre who wants to serve love's co-creation of one loves. That's all there is. So say we all. So it's almost 2 hours. That's a nice little thing. It's getting on towards 1 o'clock. The sun will stop being really ridiculously hot, and I will be able to start doing a few chores. I got a few chores. My septic system, my water system. It doesn't look like it's going to rain, so I can move stuff out and kind of air things out and look through things. And I've been doing that now for the last few weeks, and I've done it. So say we all, buddy. So, the last few minutes here, why don't you guys tell me what you're thinking about everything that you're thinking about? Let's see. We'll go back and read the chat, see what you guys have been chatting about. Let's see. Alan, long time. Good to see you, Alan. Fish. Jane. Really well, thanks. Yep. We're all doing good. See, under the pandemic, we're all doing pretty good. I'm like, the poster boy of social distancing. Yeah, middle of nowhere. Good to see you, my brother.
Yeah, the go order.
Let's see who could drink more. Yep. Well, I don't drink. I mean, I do, but I don't drink a lot. I've been drunk 3 times in my life, and each time it's been a catastrophe. First time was at prep school, all my friends drank. And this was back in there was no age, So I was a sophomore in this super duper rich, uber duper prep school, Ricky Lynch, Eddie Merrill, Kennedy's, Alex Orb, family owned U.S. Steel, Perry Dye, whose family owned, um, what's the black and white dog liquor company? They were part of Seagram's, but they weren't. That was a whole other family that went to our school. Anyway, we were, and it was a small school, 130 kids, the richest people on the planet. The Shah of Iran's son and nephew and godson and blah, blah, blah. And also the kids from Ben Laden's were there too. So it was Christmas, and we went to this place called the Oak Room in a big fancy hotel that's on Fifth Avenue and Central Park. And it wasn't that one. It was one on the corner where all the horses would take you around. It'll pop into my mind. Anyway, the Oak Room downstairs, really rich. The walls covered in oak. And it also had this other like tiki bar in it. And so we were in the Oak Room, and they had these like little rooms off the Oak Room. So all of these rich guys were in there, and they got a room upstairs with super escort girls, and we would saunter from, hey Richie, and so and then we would saunter down into the Oak Room and smoke cigars and eat oysters. That was what they had there, oysters, and drink, and then go back up. And some of the girls came down and were under the table. And so this is the first, normally, hey, Al, we're going to go to the Oak Room. You want to come? I said, nah. But this one time I said, yeah, sure. I got nothing to do. Sure. You guys mind me? If you got, oh, yeah, don't worry. You got you covered. So, and it was only 8 blocks, maybe, let's say, 2 blocks this way, 8 blocks away, 10 blocks from my house. And I knew that area like the back of my hand. I lived in that neighborhood, 69th to the Central Park, 69th, Manhattan House, 3rd Avenue, Lexington, 69th. Next was Park Avenue, then the one that starts with M, and then 5th Avenue, Central Park. Right up here was Museum of, down that way was Museum of Modern Art. This was the big museum, and then the Natural History Museum, and then the Museum of American Indian, and then Guggenheim, and then Whitney. And I knew all of those, was really locked in. And basically across the street from me was Hunter College, which was a girls' school then. And on the 4th or 5th floor, they had their gymnasium. And we were on the 21st floor. And I could look right down into the girls' changing room. And the girls knew it. And I would sit out we had this big patio that was 69th and Lexington. And I would just sit out there with binoculars, and the girls would put on a show for me, right? And sometimes they would try to, hey, come on down, we'll meet you in front of the school. So that was my life, along with going down to Madame Hoover's curiosity shop on Lexington and 30-something, 36 maybe. So that's what being the dude is, You have a life and you just live it. You're not trying to be anything except yourself, right? So anyway, let's see what you guys saying, buddy. 19 days when I was 10 years old. I was overweight. Let's see, sounds like a great night. Yeah, I love the heat. Burn. I stay out of it myself. I'm a white, I'm an African American that's melon and challenged. Rock star from the 50s. Let's see, Fish. Let's see, Jane. Commendable, Sensei, for homeless hope. Yep. See, the farmers feed the cities. Yep. Corpus Callosum. Say what? Thanks. Yep. Let's see. Just turning another year older. Yep. Alan, the more thankful we are, the more we realize we have. Wishing you every happiness.
He's still over there working that next.
Yep, me too. Gruber. Yep. So it's almost when it hits 2 hours and 20 seconds. I will 2222. When it hits that, I will say see you later, and that's in a few minutes. So, what else can I say? That's about it. That was a real ramble. But again, remember, all these things are shamanic ceremonies. They are kind of vibrating you, right? And that's why I say go back and look at the past shows. Find the top 10 that you like that really affect you. Last week or so, I did a live guided meditation from the, state troopers parking lot, because they have great Wi-Fi in their parking lot. And I get 5 bars on my cell phone. I don't really get that anywhere else. And they actually have underneath these big trees guest parking, right? Guest parking. And so back when I first parked there, and it was like there for 2 hours and didn't come in, this, officer in the state trooper's uniform came out and said, and I was doing, talking on the phone or looking on the internet or whatever. And he came up and just tapped on the window, and he was an officer. He wasn't just a pro. So, and this was a couple of years ago. I pushed the window down, and he goes, "So, sir, can we help you?" I said, "Oh, you guys are doing a great job. You are really the best." And I just went on how great they were and how glad I'm there that they built this, because it was relatively new. I'd been there a good 15 years before they built their state trooper, whatever they call it. And I went on how I just love the state troopers and what a great job they do. And he was just, he goes, "So, but you've been here an hour and a half. What do you?" I said, "Well, you guys are so nice to put the Wi-Fi and the invitation. Look at that. I'm parked right in front of a sign that says guest parking. You're just so nice. Are you going to bring out tea and cookies?" And he actually frigging did. He brought out coffee and styrofoam cups and ring dings, but it was, and he came out and he gave me coffee and ring dings. And he was, Lieutenant Bob. And he gave me his card, and I said, Lieutenant Bob, I've had a great long history of being a sensei to the police. And he goes, sensei, I know that word. Don't tell me, I know what it is. And when he goes, don't tell me, I said, it's teacher. He said, right. I go, what do you teach? And I said, how to breathe, how to not overreact, how to be, better than you're trained to be. And he goes, wow, we'd like that. So, I did that for them. And that was a good 8 years ago. And so Lieutenant Bob is now Commissioner Bob off in the state capitol. But he's told everybody, who took his job, hey, this guy, he is somebody you should go be a friend. And he'll listen to you and he'll give you advice in ways that no one will talk to you. And so,
Yeah.
so anyway.
I don't know. Whatever she puts on, I'll eat it.
Anyway, so here we are. We're almost there. So I might do one tomorrow from my beautiful state park. I may not be able to do a live show, but I'll make phone calls. So anybody wants to talk to me, go to Gmail. They just made a lot of chlorine in here. And chlorine does not kill things like this stuff. 100%, alcohol, ethyl alcohol, or isopropyl, whatever alcohol is. And it smells nice. It's not like chlorine that's going to kill you. So Okay, I'm gonna say see you guys later. It was fun. Um, Go back and watch whatever one you want. Get as much as you can get out of this. Actually, the pandemic is a good thing because it's going to give us some. I've been talking about the opportunity, the window of opportunity. I've been talking about that for a year, right? And we are like I said, between yesterday and August 23rd, there's going to be an event. That will be, oh my God, aliens will land. We could also have war with China, and because we had war with Russia and Syria, not a big deal. We had war with Russia in North Korea. North Korea is so destroyed. Kim Jong Un is probably dead already. His sister, who's a total fruitcake, is. But I love her. Sweetie. You're the best. And she's taken over. And yeah, they got missiles with atomic bombs, but they have like 40,000 pieces of artillery pieces locked and loaded. Push one button, they're all going to go boom and take out Seoul, kill 20 million people at once, kill 40,000 American soldiers at once, and we're going to be at war with them, right? And when we do that, China will send their Air Force and naval assets into the Sea of Japan and take all those islands and everything they can, and also a little further down past Vietnam, where the Taiwan is labeled. Taiwan is a big island, and then there's an archipelago, a chain of little islands. There are some that they can very easily step off of China. It's like just one step, bingo, they're there. And Taiwan has airstrips there and facilities that all China has to do is like step in there, land their airplanes there, and they got them, right? Well, then they'd be at war with Taiwan. Now we have a treaty with Taiwan to protect them. South Korea, we don't have a treaty with them to protect them. We have this thing that we're still at war there, right? It's just, a armistice. It's just, time out, right, for the last 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. And so, Seoul gets obliterated, kills 20 million people and 40,000 Americans. We got to send our stuff there. China goes to these islands. We have to send our stuff there. So we will probably have to commit more than half of our U.S. aircraft fleets, and that's $500 billion limits. Our Ford class aircraft carrier surrounded by Aegis missile frigates, which are floating Cray computers that can figure out, anything coming in and shoot it down. But China has given North Korea these big submarines that are noisy. You can hear them, but attached to the big submarines are these like little submarines with 5-6 guys in them that go really slow.
But he said he had
make no
a
noise,
20% coupon.
have very acoustic stuff where it listens. It doesn't ping out. It just listens, and it has 4 or 5 of these torpedoes that have a rocket engine on it, and instead of a little propeller shooting it through the water, the rocket engine. So instead of going about 60 knots, it goes about 1,200 miles an hour. So instead of taking 10 minutes for it to get from that submarine to the aircraft carrier, it does it in about 20 seconds. And it takes about a third of the stuff being kicked out from the rocket engine down these pipes along the edge of the torpedo and pushes it out and makes an envelope around the torpedo so it's not going through water. So it doesn't have the friction. It creates this bubble in front of it, so it's always going through the bubble. And that's why it can move at about 1,200 miles an hour. And the United States has those, but they said, we don't need them. I mean, they invented those things like in the 50s. The Russians stole it and did it in the 70s and said, when the Chinese got it, they said, we can use this because the United States will be so vulnerable. The aircraft carrier groups will be so vulnerable. So we will do something that will cause them to bring all of their aircraft carrier groups into this vulnerable water. We will take out there. So that means they will sink, and it will be, we won't know, because the North Koreans will do this. We won't know whether the Chinese or the North Koreans, I mean, it's Chinese um, technology given to the North Koreans, and the North Koreans will do it because they're nuts, and they will take out somewhere between 3 to 8 um, U.S. aircraft missiles. So that will be, 3 to 8 aircraft carriers out of about $500 billion apiece, each having 5,000 guys on them, surrounded by a naval task force that will have 12 ships, each costing $60 billion or more. And these torpedoes have atomic bombs on them. So they just have to get, close. They don't have to hit anything. And they will be moving so fast, there's no way that, before those groups know that that missile is coming at them, they will kill, let's say there's, 5 groups, right? Now each aircraft carrier has 5,000 guys on it. So 5,000, that's 25,000. And each of those have about 20 boats with maybe 100 people on it. So that's 2,000. Let's say 3,000. So times 5, so that's 15,000. So maybe 70,000 guys will die like that, and the cost will be, hardware, manpower, training. You're probably looking at $60 trillion. So that right there is a big cost. What are we going to do about it? And the only reason that will happen is because of our present administration's ineptitude and incompetence. But our present administration is the same administration that came, Obama, Georgie Porgy, Billy Boy, Georgie Porgy 1, Ronnie Boy. They're all the same. There is no level of competence any greater. They are all the bottom of the barrel. They all represent, they all do what the hidden hand tells them to do. And the hidden hand will tell them to do this because it'll cause such disruption in world dynamics. So that's one of the worst cases. The other is, our sun is in the low solar minimum. Right? So you should go watch the movie by Art Bell and his protege called Day After Tomorrow. Right? And we could have an event like that. All of nature is lined up. Not to have, super duper global warming, but to have a new ice age. So, and that will happen like that, right? So I will be frozen to death, freeze frozen, so it won't be a big deal for me. I will be Whitley Strieber. Thank you. Yes, I love Whitley Strieber. He did a great book on 2012, right? And he did another great book called Grace. I mean, he's really good. I mean, he did Communion, and that was like get people to think about abduction. And then he did 5 or 6 books about that, and it got boring. But then he realized he got to widen his thing. And the book 2012 is really about it. Opens up. Everyone's, it's the end of the world. New Year's, 1999, 2011, bingo, New Year's, and nothing happens. And all the guys said, nothing happened. But it's just the kickoff. 2012 was the kickoff. And I'm in my new novel that I'm writing, Legacy, and I'm going to put up, right now, Slice 9. Go read it at xratted.blogspot.com. And in a couple of days, by Tuesday or Wednesday, I will have cut 10. And it will have part of the story about what happened at the Rainbow Gathering just up the road from here at a TVA lake right on the border of West Virginia and Tennessee. And that was in 2012, 4th of July of 2012. And that was when this wave, energy wave, came through the whole planet. And another one came through us just the 23rd of June. Did any of you feel it? Any of you feel it? Any of you feel it? 5:17 a.m. Okay. When I'm gonna probably go to the parking lot on Monday, and I will probably do a live chat Monday, starting at right at so around 6 a.m. for you, buddy, right? So you sleep really well Sunday night. Get up at around this time, and around 2 o'clock, between 2:30 and 3. So at 6 a.m. I will be doing a live chat in your neck of the woods. So come on aboard. Give a little thought about how you're feeling about. I mean, watch this show. I don't know how much of this you watch, buddy, but go back and watch this show, and watch the last 3 or 4 all the way to the live meditation I did for the parking lot, and use that shamanic energy to open up your mind and write about how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're expecting. Give me some feedback, okay? And go read Legacy. On xratted.blogspot.com. Okay? Okay. So, it's time to go. Yeah, I missed it by a little bit. So I will say, I love you. In our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Don't think so. See you, bud. Whitley Street. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. As was in the beginning, is now, and shall be, will without end. And every day and every way, take the peace of the earth. Make it better through love, through creation. And Father Sky, Mother Earth, and the Holy Spirit. That's what we are. Bless us indeed. Enlarge our territory. Put your hand upon our shoulder and protect us and keep us from evil so we will do no harm. So say we all. Love you guys. Catch you later.